Alright, Economics Video Volume 3. So let's do this in overview. Let's analogize the economy with a game. I mean, I think it's a fair analogy. It's a sport. It's a whatever, you know. It's an event that takes place in some sort of manner, okay, that's supposed to accomplish something. So I think it can fit into that metaphor. And if you're going to have a good game, you got to have rules, you got to have umpires, all that stuff. It's just common sense. You don't just let chaos rule. I don't think there's a game on Earth in which chaos is presumed to be, the logic of the game. It just doesn't work that way. So people who talk about free enterprise and free markets and free this and deregulate that, it's almost baby talk. It doesn't have anything to do with any reality we know. You got to design things for them to work. We don't pay architects a lot of money because they know how to make something chaotically. No, it's because they know how to engineer it so it works. And that's really the game here. You're not going to have an economic system that works if you don't impose some sort of rules on the game. And so it has some sort of fairness built into it, some sort of consistency, some sort of reliability. I've sort of made the argument that the word freedom shouldn't even exist because freedom should be kind of understood based on understanding the white space around it, or the black space of responsibility, whatever you want to call that. But that's really what it's about. I mean, you should be as free to do whatever you want as long as you fulfill your responsibilities. I mean, once they're fulfilled, then everything else is your freedom, your right. But I don't think there's any other way to do it, to see it for what it is, and that's what it is. I mean, there's no such thing as an absolute freedom. So why even play with the word? I mean, it's like a word like random or spontaneous. It just doesn't really have any meaning. So there's always going to be some regulation to a market. There's no such thing as a free market. There has to be some expectations built into it. If people had the freedom to cheat each other, well, then they'd end up with the freedom to kill each other. And so then there would, at least that would be the rule, would be that the normative standard that everybody would be doing business with a gun at each other's head, and do their little transaction and make sure everything went just right, or we're going to blow each other's heads off. And it's, but at any rate, so let's concede that there has to be some definition to the game for there to be a good game. I mean, tennis isn't going to be tennis if you don't have the tennis rules. If you don't have the little stripes and the net and the umpire, it's not a game. And the same for baseball or football or anything else. There's got to be rules, and there's got to be a field that doesn't sit there, isn't tilted or twisted or warped to give advantage to one team or another team or a certain kind of player. Even little things like the whole idea of, if you don't regulate the sport, well, then all the athletes start taking steroids, they start destroying their health, because that'll become the standard, and that'll become the requirement of playing the game. And so there has to be disincentives for that kind of behavior. There has to be a rule that says, no, that's not where we want to go. That's not what we want to turn the game into. And so anyway, the economy is just a game. And so all it's really about is defining fair rules and sustainable rules that are reliable, and that everybody can conform to, and that provide a fairness, a consistency that is fairness. And so it's about having honesty in the definition of the rules in the first place, and in the second place, trying, to some extent, to make sure the umpires are honest, and providing mechanisms that prevent dishonesty, I guess would be a good way to say it. Because you can see what happens if you don't have rules. If you don't have a rule, then people will do every little cheat. It's like the old Yankee Stadium syndrome, that's the house that Ruth built. Yeah, so they put the really short little left field fence so he could hit more home runs, because they tailored the ballpark to his swing. you know. And so, you know, if you had a standard that says, yeah, this is where the fence is supposed to be, this is how far you have to hit a ball to get a home run, and it really shouldn't change depending on what park you're playing in. But anyway, that's just an example. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that we will bend the rules. We will cheat wherever possible. That's human nature. I'd use as another example the internet. You know, that's basically been free marketed to pieces, and you can see the inefficiencies. I mean, for any efficiency we've gained in the internet, we've lost any value to all the shysterism, to all the spam and all the nonsense, billions, tens of billions of dollars of waste that it's created, because all we've done is create a bunch of industries devoted to ripping people off. Even the whole indexing scheme, it's, you know, we give it to the corporations as if the corporations are going to be honorable in how they play the game, and they're not. They're in it to sell their advertising. And so instead of the line between production and consumption getting shorter through this magnificent technology, we just put in a new artificial middleman. We've reinstalled them. The internet could have given us liberty from all the nonsense, and instead we just dragged all the crap back into this new realm and said, yeah, even though we can do it without them, let's throw them back in the mix again. And whatever. So I'm just saying this is, you know, and it's just a perfect example of an unregulated, chaotic market. And you can just see the chaos it creates, the waste that's created, because there will be cheating. We see it. Human beings are cheaters. They just are. And I'm not saying some of it isn't. Some people cheat because they're desperate, because they got to feed their family, they got to make a living, and all this other crap. And I'm not justifying it, but I'm just saying that's part of what's wrong. Is that if we have a system where people will compromise and break the rules to get what they need to get, if their need is greater than the strength of the rules, well, then the rules will lose. So anyway, so in this game, like I said, it's just common sense. And in the last video, I argued for the obvious, that, you know, if you're going to have a race, you don't put some horses halfway down the track and some horses three-quarters the way down the track, and you don't put some horses across the finish line and then yell go and say you have a good race. No one's going to be interested in watching that race. And we've done that in the economy. We allow, you know, huge advantages to old legacy capital. They get to really decide what the rules of the game are going to be, because they have the power. They can afford to lose money for decades sometimes. So they're playing the game a whole different way. Okay, if they strike out, it means literally nothing. Okay, and to some other player in the game, if they strike out, they're not going to leave the ballpark alive. You know, their kids will go hungry. You know, you can't play a game that way. It doesn't make any sense. It's not a game. It's a setup, and that's what we have for an economy. We have a setup. So another way of looking at this is, look, all you want to do in an economy is give people incentive to be productive. You want to avoid using whips wherever possible, and you want to put incentive carrots in front of people. And you want to do that in an efficient as possible manner to get the most work. So if you have 100 horses, and some horses need more carrots than others to do the work, then you've got to figure out how to distribute the carrots in an effort to get the most fucking productive work out of the horses. It's just that simple. And our system is almost doing it backwards. The people that need the least incentive, we put the most carrots in front of, and the people that need the most incentive, we put the least carrots in front of. Well, I said that the same way, but anyway, you get the point. And so it's doomed to failure. It's doomed not to get the best potential out of human beings. It's doomed not for us to be as productive as we can be, because we don't all have the right incentives. We don't have incentives tailored to our circumstance, put it that way. And it's not healthy. It's not productive. You're not going to get work out of starved horses, and you're not going to get work out of fat horses. You know, that's maybe another way of looking at it. I mean, you want to keep them all lean and mean. So anyway, that's probably enough for this video. Don't want to go harping on But it's just so obvious when you look at it that we haven't engineered the economy. We've just thrown in a few whenever we have to. Whenever things get horrible, they'll throw in some sort of rule. But we really haven't engineered a game, and there's nobody doing that on purpose. It's just a bunch of special interests fighting over how they're going to play the game. So the pitchers have their own union in government. You know, they have their own lobbyists, and the first basemen have their own lobbyists, and the batters have their own lobbyists, and the home run hitters versus the line drive hitters, and they all have their own lobbyists, and everybody's lobbying to get the greatest advantage for their skill set, for what they have to contribute. And it's just a disaster, because nobody is doing this for the sake of the game. They're all in it for what's to my advantage. I mean, that's how we got into this whole debt problem and this deficit problem, is people weren't thinking about sustainable systems and what's in the interest of society. No, they were thinking I want more, I want a tax cut, I want you to educate my kids, I want free health care, I want this, I want that. And they were all talking from an individual perspective. As long as people keep thinking their individuality is more important than the whole society we all must live in, we are doomed to fail. So, enough preaching. Till next time. Really, there will be a next time. It's inevitable, I think. Well, maybe not, but who knows? Probably till next time. Most likely, for sure, possibly. Yeah, maybe.